Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Fiddle Hotel on this slightly damp morning in the middle of November. My name is Jason Owen. I'm the chairman of the Sydney Hills Business Chamber. It's my great pleasure to welcome you here this morning for this event where we are welcoming our guest, the Premier of New South Wales, Chris Minns. I'm looking forward today to having a chat about some of the issues that affect our local area, particularly for the business environment. I'd like to acknowledge a couple of other special guests that we have here today. The Honourable Michelle Rowland, Member for Greenway, and also the nation's Attorney General. We also have the Honourable Warren Kirby, MP for Riverstone here. He's a state MP. We also have Dr Michelle Byrne, the Mayor of the Sydney Hills Shire Council, and Councillor Frank Damasi, the Deputy Mayor of the Hills Shire Council. There's also a couple of previous chairs of this chamber here, Kerry Sheaves and Jim Taggart I saw wandering around somewhere. Jim. My apologies if I've missed anyone. We also have, is Sam here? Did I see Sam Morton? No, okay. So we do have a couple of guests here from Business New South Wales, and I should make a point that today has come with the support of Business New South Wales. We have a Tier 1 relationship with them as part of their chamber program, where we're able to work very closely with them in terms of creating an environment that is successful for businesses to flourish throughout the state. So thanks to Business New South Wales for their support. A little bit of housekeeping. So exits are here where the signs are. You see people running, run faster. I make that same joke every week. I get the odd chuckle. I'm just going to stick with it because consistency is key. Toilets are outside on the left there when you've came in. So please feel to use the bathrooms as you need. Next, I'll move on to our welcomers and our connectors. So you would have been greeted this morning by Mackenzie and Sarah, who are our welcomers. Just put your hands together for them, thank you. And then you would have seen some people wandering around with orange high-vis vests. They're not doing stop-go traffic things for the traffic on Windsor Road, no pun intended. They are our connectors. Our connectors are here to connect you with anybody in the room. So they have a list of every guest in the room, and their job is to connect you to someone. So if there is someone in the room that you want to meet and you don't know who they are, please approach them. They're wearing the bright yellow orange vests. If I can get you guys to stand up. We have David, John, Cameron and Luke. Ironically, all four of these gentlemen are actually part of our leadership team of the chamber. So thank you very much, gents, for your time and ongoing effort making this happen. Our connectors are proudly supported by Streamline Engineering, which is run by Amanda Primrose up the back here. As a chamber, our role is clear: to support, educate and advocate for the business community, not just in the hills, but through the northwest of Sydney. We provide practical resources, training, networking events and connection to that community, right from the small businesses right up to the larger corporates, enabling business to flourish and also advocating for them up to government to provide a better environment for business to operate in. I myself am a business owner. I'm a small business owner, operates a business up in the Hawkesbury. We've been running for about 8 years after spending about 35 years in television, working all around the world on sports and different reality events. So I feel some of the pain that you guys feel as business owners in terms of cost of living, interest rates, housing pressure, transport. All those things mean something to me as well. So I guess as your chairman, I stand up here and say that I feel the same pain that you guys are feeling. And when I talk to people around Sydney, they tell me very similar problems. There are definitely regional issues, but certainly most of the people suffer from the same things, which is nice to know in a way that we're all feeling the same pain. Just in terms of the hills, there's around 26,000 businesses in our LGA. Over the last couple of years, that's gone up around about 0.5%. I think what I'd say is the most interesting part, 25,000 of those 26,000 businesses employ 1 to 19 people. So that's what they classify as a small business. That fits in with the national average. It's about 92, 93% of Australian businesses are classified as small businesses. If you own or operate one of those in the room today, you are effectively the engine room of the country. That's what makes our country move. The big corporates have a massive role to play, but it's the small businesses, the small enterprises, the mum and dad businesses that employ people that actually get things done. So my hat goes off to all of you. In terms of those 26,000 businesses, professional, scientific and technical roles is number one in terms of the quantity of businesses. Real estate services is third, and in second place is construction. Ironically, they are the same top three business categories across the country. The order is just slightly different for the hills. I think what we'll see in time is that order change a little bit as other industries come into the LGA. Today I'd like to acknowledge some of the challenges that our local people are feeling. Recent data talks about a number of insolvencies in New South Wales. So there's about 4,600 insolvencies in the last financial year, which represents about 41% of the nation's insolvencies, yet we carry about 31% of the population. So I guess we're overachieving in the wrong way in terms of insolvencies. I would note that this is still below the pre-COVID levels, which is interesting, but still tells me that we need to support businesses and finding out where their pain points are and removing those barriers to success. One of those that I've identified is a service called Business Connect, which is run by the New South Wales Government. Over the years that it ran, I think it started in 2017, it delivered around 134,000 hours to businesses across the state with a support rate of around 89%. So I'd ask you to consider, is this a service that we can afford to lose? From my perspective, I think it's something that we should continue to maintain for the business community. The next one is our housing shortage. It's no news. It's no surprises there that we do have a housing shortage. And we could probably argue all day about whether it is supply side, if it's approvals, if it's people, trades, but there is a problem and we have to acknowledge that and work together with government and industry to come up with some innovative solutions to solve that. And I think that certainly for Sydney, because it is quite different, that there's not a one-shoe-fits-all scenario, that we have to be a little bit flexible and dynamic in terms of how we address that problem. I myself, who live up in the Hawkesbury is a very different part of Sydney. It's very rural. People like to protect that rural aspect of it. And I think in time that will change. It will need to change because of our population growth, not just from migration, but our own natural organic growth with homegrown Australians. As we look ahead, the Sydney Hills Business Chamber remains committed to working collaboratively with government, with industry, to support the business community. We believe that targeted infrastructure, business support services, and a resolution to our housing issue are the three core things that we need to solve in terms of supporting business. Everybody here knows Windsor Road. We know the train line, missing the gap from St Mary's to Tallawong. We also have a train line, the heavy rail that runs from Blacktown up to Richmond, that is a single direction only from Vineyard onwards. So these are all big infrastructure projects that I think over time will need to be addressed in order to leverage the opportunity. And that's what I guess I come back to, is the opportunity, is how do we leverage that for the people. Our chamber recently launched a youth chapter called Young Momentum to support and empower 18 to 30-year-olds. There's a number of you here that were at the launch event. And again, thanks to Bedford College for supporting us and the council for supporting us with that effort. This is all about supporting the next generation of leaders, both in the community and in business. And I think that in our scenario, we kind of want to lead from the front. We thought about this for a long time. There's not too many examples at the moment where chambers support youth. So we wanted to lead the way and blaze a bit of a trail. I will say, though, that there are a number of examples across Australia where this has been very successful in terms of bringing young people into leadership positions and mentoring them into the community. They are our future leaders. So half of our focus should be on bringing them up, lifting them up and supporting them. So congratulations to the Young Momentum team for getting that underway. It's no small measure. It's plenty of nerves, plenty of tears, plenty of laughs to come in terms of how they get up and running. I won't talk too much longer. I know you all want to hear the Premier speak. Please have a great morning. There's lots of horsepower in this room. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of smart people. Please take the time to engage with your audience and enjoy your morning. I'd like to welcome the 47th Premier of New South Wales, Chris Minns.
G'day everybody, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate the Chamber and Jason for the invitation, and I just want to acknowledge my colleague Warren Kirby, as well as the country's Attorney General, Michelle, great to see you. The Mayor of the Hills, Michelle, it's great to see you as well. Thanks everyone for coming out early on a bit of a rain-swept Friday morning, but I think we're all looking forward to the weekend and certainly the end of the year, Christmas time. Great time of the year in Sydney, an opportunity to spend time with your community and your family and your friends. It's a busy time in politics too. You might not know this, but there's leadership changes in the air. This often happens in November of every year. And every time, as a political leader, when I hear about a leadership change, I start to duck and think, oh my goodness, what's going on? But luckily for us at the moment, that's not the case. But it is an interesting time in New South Wales politics, and I'm really grateful that you've given me the opportunity to speak about commerce, the economy, the future of the hills, and how it all stitches together, as well as the challenges that we're facing in New South Wales. I want you to know, and I know that Warren knows this as well as a former executive at the Riverstone Chamber of Commerce, that we're a government that appreciates the hard work and dedication that small business owners and entrepreneurs have to put into their personal business. I've never run a small business, but my wife has run a few. And I've told this story often, but the number of times that I would finish a full day of work, we had young kids at the time, you'd finish a full day of work, starting early in the morning, getting the kids off to school or at that time off to daycare, work through the day, get home, turn on the television, have dinner together, and then I just conk out, go to bed. And Anna, who ran her own firm and had 2 employees, had to open a computer and start again at 9 o'clock at night and work till 11, maybe even later. And then she'd crawl into bed close to midnight and do it all over again the next day. And after a while, I said to her, well, look, something's got to give here. You can't be expected to do all this extra work. And her reply to me was, well, no one else is going to do it. It's just me. If it's not done tonight, it's not going to get done. And I think that is a small reflection from my family's perspective of the sacrifices that you have to put into your business. The missed Christmases, the missed weddings, the family gatherings that you can't go to because someone's got to do that work. There's an opportunity that comes up or a crisis that just cannot be missed. And we want to see those businesses grow and prosper. It is a central part of the New South Wales economy. It's the biggest employer in New South Wales, small businesses. And frankly, the economy won't grow and be diverse and entrepreneurial unless we see more of them into the future. So we want to back small businesses. Jason didn't mention workers' comp for New South Wales businesses, but the truth of the matter is when I speak to businesses across New South Wales, they continue to say to me that workers' comp premiums are skyrocketing. And the leading reason for workers' comp premiums skyrocketing is psychosocial claims in the workplace. And this is a difficult decision for a Labor government to make, but Warren and myself and my colleagues went to the Parliament and said, we need to make a decision about the psychosocial claims that are being made in the workplace and make sure that it's sustainable in the future. Not because we want to see people shortchanged or have a step back if they're going through a significant personal mental health challenge, but can businesses really cover the permanent cost of this ongoing, in many cases, for years? And let me give you some statistics here. In just the last 3 years, the average claim for a psychosocial injury in the workplace has gone from $150,000 to $300,000. There's been a 90% increase in the claims from people under the age of 25. And we've seen a situation where not-for-profits, charities, NGOs have had their premiums go up by 90%. And the reason for that is workers' comp was traditionally established for physical injuries in the workplace. And most charities don't have physical injuries in the workplace, but with the increase in psychosocial claims, their premiums are skyrocketing. Now, a lot of businesses in this room will tell me that that's just the premium increase. If you've got a claim in the workplace, you can expect it to go up even more. And it sits on your books for 3 years. So we made a difficult decision for a Labor government in particular because the unions didn't support this change. but we wanted to make sure we were in a position to ensure that psychosocial injuries and the eye care system was sustainable. We put a bill through Parliament. Part of it was passed, but I regret to tell you the rest of it was not. And we're in a situation at the moment where premiums are expected to increase over the next 2 years by a compound 17%. And that means since 2022, premiums for New South Wales businesses will have risen 45% for 340,000 businesses in the state. Now, look, I don't want to get too political. I don't think that's the purpose of a forum like this, but we need this bill to pass. We need it to pass before Christmas. It's the single biggest intervention that the state government can make to ensure that businesses are sustainable and that they've got a strong and healthy prospects for the new year. And I still believe bipartisanship works. I still believe that there's a responsibility for both political parties to sit around the table and work out ways to work together, not just throw bombs at each other and try and score cheap political points. We were able to work with the coalition on a housing bill 2 weeks ago. Landmark changes to what I think you'll all acknowledge is the worst planning system in the country, the most difficult, the hardest to navigate, the biggest disincentive for capital investment, the worst when it comes to home building and houses for the next generation. We lost 45,000 young people last year to other states and other jurisdictions. Particularly if you're a young tradie or you've got a profession and you've got a skill, you can travel. You can go to Queensland, you can go to Western Australia. And we know that there's opportunities in those jurisdictions. I'll give you some statistics here, and these are troubling, but over the last 15 years, we've built in New South Wales 6 houses per 1,000 people every 12 months. In Victoria, they've built 8 houses per 1,000 people, and in Queensland, which in my opinion has the best planning system, it's been 9 houses per 1,000 people. So Sydney, which is the second most expensive city on earth, the highest average house price, the highest increases in house prices, the highest increases in rents, the highest rents are also producing the lowest number of houses. And we can do so much better. The state government's got a big responsibility here. I mean, I've resisted the temptation to just say, oh, look, it's all the council's fault or it's all the federal government's fault. We're not getting enough help. I know it's us. The responsibility is on us. The obligation is on us, and we want to do better. So if we can get those houses in place, we can take pressure off your labour costs, we can take pressure off the economy, we can get more young people staying in Sydney. And I think what we want, ultimately, is for the next generation to put down roots in places like the Hills and say, this is where I want to start a business. These are where I want to work. This is where I want to work. I want to become the president of the PNC or the coach of the football club. And that's not going to happen unless we can provide homes. Even if we can start to do what Queensland has been doing, we'll make a big impact in the average house price. And that means that we can, with legitimacy and some authority, say to the next generation, we want you to be part of our community. We don't want to price you out. I could speak about many, many other things, but I know you want to get to questions, and Jason's going to ask me a few questions too. But hopefully that sets the scene as to what the challenges that we're encountering. We're trying to run a government, we don't always get it right, but we're trying to run a government that calls it straight and then tries to take action. And I don't believe in gilding the lily. I don't believe in saying that the sky is, red when it's actually blue. I actually believe that if we can sit around the table, work out some of these challenges, then there is plenty that we can achieve without just being, nakedly political all the time. Really appreciate you coming out. Can't wait to get to questions. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks very much, Chris. I think, and I've seen you speak at a couple of different events, and I would say that one thing I've seen consistent with the Premier is that he takes ownership. He's not one of those guys that pushes things away, which is really refreshing to see one of our leaders stand up here and take ownership of some of those problems that we know that are there. And I heard, but the undertone there is really about collaboration to get things moving. I'm going to ask a couple of specific questions now to the Premier without notice. The first one's going to be about infrastructure. So we all know about the infrastructure challenges we've got. So given the $1.1 billion investment we've had in Bandon Road, Richmond Road, some roads on the other side of Windsor Road, how will your government In short, these projects actually reduce the congestion in the area to support local economic growth, but also talk specifically about the metro, the Tallawong to St Mary's link. I think for us as high airport users in the hills, we don't really want to travel to Kingston Smith. If we can travel out to Badgerys Creek, that would be the preference. Windsor Road has been a bottleneck for a long time, and I probably struggle to see that we'll actually get ahead of it. But also that Richmond train line service, which I alluded to earlier, that I think as an enabler to have people be able to move. We've got a new suburb coming with Richards on the western side of Riverstone. I think that those three major things are something I'd love to hear your opinion on in terms of how the government intends to support that type of infrastructure.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. You're right to raise them, and they're important questions. One of the things that Warren did when he got first elected is to say, and he did it in a very transparent but persuasive way, and he was able to show how much has been spent on roads on the eastern side of Parramatta versus roads on the western side of Parramatta. And the disparity was incredible. I mean, some of it was the toll road infrastructure that's gone in, but he just said, okay, well, let's look at the population growth west of Parramatta, particularly in the Sydney's northwest, and let's look at it east of Parramatta and see where the government's investing. And it was so damning in terms of underinvestment in some of the fastest growing communities that in the first budget, we immediately earmarked over $1 billion for Garfield East, Bandon, Richmond. We want to say more about some roads, but you got to leave us a few tricks up our sleeve as we get closer to the election campaign. I mean, but we're close to finalising some future road infrastructure in the days ahead, in the months ahead, and we're excited about those prospects. Some of them have been a little bit delayed, particularly in relation to the weather, but they're all going to get done. And they're long overdue, and they're an essential part of putting the jigsaw puzzle together for Western Sydney. So I'm looking forward to seeing those projects being completed. In the interim, you might have missed this, but the government has announced that we're keeping the toll cap at $60 permanent for New South Wales, and we are not removing that. Some of the largest claimants of that toll rebate, that $60 a week toll rebate, was in Sydney's northwest. It's important that it stays, and we're working on a way to permanently fund it. I don't believe in the one-off handouts. You might have seen in some other states that they do 50-cent fares just before an election, and it just so happens to extinguish just after an election. So we made a decision that if we're going to have cost of living measure like a $60 a week toll cap, we want to make sure that it is funded, and it's funded in perpetuity so that you can organise your own personal finances knowing that it's not going to be yanked away from you at some point in the future. When it comes to infrastructure, particularly fixed transport infrastructure, we've got, I'm just going to be frank with everyone, serious challenges. Now, the previous government, to their enormous credit, built 21 metro stations for Sydney, and they've been fantastic for our community. They are world-class. They make people from Melbourne incredibly jealous when they come up to Sydney. And I think that Gladys Berejiklian deserves a lot of credit for that. What you might not know is that in addition to that 21, we are currently building another 25 metro stations across Sydney. And they're very expensive. I mean, Metro West, for example, costs $25 billion. That's the equivalent of 3 Brisbane Olympics. All of their infrastructure, every part of their stadiums, all of their velodromes, their Olympic villages, every part of it. So I'm in a situation where when we say we're going to commit to something, you can take it to the bank. The Labor Party in the past, if I'm going to be honest, has made flamboyant statements about building infrastructure, put out a media release, and then never delivered. And I'm determined I'm not going to make that same mistake. So that when I say we're building Metro West, we're keeping the toll cap, we're building these roads, you know it's going to happen. And then when we get the money in and we're confident enough in a position to either borrow, to build, you know that we are going to go ahead with it, and it's not just another empty promise from a New South Wales government politician.
Fantastic. So when you got up and you spoke, you mentioned the workers' compensation challenges they've had. I think it's very well documented in the business community. Again, business owner myself, I've seen my premiums rise, even though we're only a small team of 7. It's another increase in cost to business. You mentioned the toll cap. Again, as a business that operates in the Hawkesbury and travels into Sydney around our roads, and our roads are brilliant, there's no doubt about it, it's a huge cost to business, the tolls. So they're great initiatives to help us keep a lid on our cost base. And obviously, I appreciate your frankness in terms of the challenges that we have. We are a big country, we are a big state, and infrastructure costs a lot of money, and it doesn't appear out of anywhere. Talking more specifically about our youth, and you mentioned people want to set their roots down here and raise their children, go to school, and start a business. That really dovetails into our conversation about the topic I mentioned earlier about our youth chamber. In terms of supporting that future generation, there's a couple of examples. So in South Australia, there was an accelerator program where the South Australian government worked with chambers to develop literally thousands of young entrepreneurs. There's another system overseas, internationally, that's worked very well. So I'd love to hear what you think as a government would be a way to support our next generation of leaders. So whilst we can talk about infrastructure and houses all day, what's tomorrow? And you mentioned that briefly, that some of these are generational projects, like the metro and all the roads. They're things that'll happen when we've all moved on. They're legacy things. So how do you feel about the youth side?
Well, Jason told me earlier when I came in and he introduced me to Nicholas. Nicholas, yeah. And the youth chamber. And hats off to the chamber for doing that. I think that is one of the single best initiatives that I've seen from a chamber across the state. We could be doing more of it from the government's point of view, encouraging entrepreneurship, encouraging people taking a chance on their idea. It is a risk. It's a risk, but life's a risk. And particularly if you're a young person, I think that we need to see more of it in the New South Wales economy, not less of it. I think it's absolutely crucial for economic growth and opportunity. And we know that if we see more entrepreneurs, more young people dip their toe into the commercial world by backing themselves in the years ahead, some of them will become medium-sized businesses, some will become big businesses, and then they'll become export businesses. And that is crucial for New South Wales. I mean, this isn't going to happen tomorrow, but South Korea announced this week that they're going to cease building and close down their coal-fired power stations. And South Korea is one of our largest export partners when it comes to coal, and coal, maybe a lot of people don't know this, is the state's biggest export. So we know that our biggest export markets have said to us, we're going to be buying less of and then eventually none of your single biggest export item. And that means that we need Nicholas and thousands more of him, not all on your shoulders, Nicholas, to say, I'm going to back myself. I'm going to set up a business right here in New South Wales and I'm going to look to the stars and I'm going to pull it off. Because we have to fill effectively a $30 to $50 billion export-led industry to keep our standard of living high, to have the revenues for the New South Wales government and think to the future. I'm just full of admiration for it. I'm full of admiration for young people that back themselves and have a go. It's really an intrinsic part of particularly Sydney. I think Sydney is the most entrepreneurial city of any place in the country. Maybe Perth's a close second or rivals us for it. And I'm not seeing enough of it. I joked a little. Look, I'm not a lawyer, but I've got tons of lawyers in my family. I'm saying this in front of the Federal Attorney General, but we have a lot of lawyers. And I think we need a lot more entrepreneurs. So I often say to young people, when they're considering arts, law for university, yeah, maybe, but most lawyers don't practice. Maybe you can back yourself and think about starting a business and who knows where it'll take you.
Absolutely, and that's part of the reason.
Apologies to the Law Society if they're here, but
we have a lot of professional services in the hills. I think just going off the back of your comment there about that longer term plan, I mean, this is an investment in the future, a bit like the infrastructure. This is human infrastructure or social capital. So my last question before we get into a bit of Q&A so we can eat. Everybody's probably twitching because they haven't had any food yet. That I know in my role here as the chairman of the chamber, I'm not here forever. It's a short time that you're in leadership roles. And generally, most first-term governments most first-term governments seek a second term. So in terms of legacy, what do you feel that you'd love to put in place that is your legacy project for the one day when you're no longer in politics?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's really difficult to talk about legacies. I mean, I feel like we've just begun, and sometimes, you know, I know that the clock's ticking, but you get focused on the things that are in front of you. But what I would love to see is our economy growing, we're investing in the next generation. Probably the best decisions that we've made have been around public education, particularly in Western Sydney. And we've invested billions of dollars into schools that haven't seen a lot for a long time. And we believe that it's not a cost to the budget. We genuinely think that it's an investment in the future. It's just going to pay off. Whether your kids go there or not, you'll be working in companies where we've got a highly educated, highly motivated, switched on next generation. And that's just so important for the future. So the most important legacy that I could leave behind is investing in that part of the state. So that's on a policy level. On a political level, we live in the best country in the world by far. Part of the reason we live in the best country in the world is that politics is important to Australians, but I don't think it's the most important thing. And that you can still go to the cricket or the footy with your friend who votes the exact opposite way to you, and it doesn't matter. I mean, a lot of my friends wouldn't vote for me in a pink fit, but we can still go to the football together. And that's not the case in many places around the world. So I know that there's a leadership change today in politics, but I'm going to say a bit later on, my obligation isn't to look for an opportunity to throw bombs at the new leader of the opposition. My responsibility is to see where we can work together. Why does it always have to be, you know, shooting each other at 10 paces? There are things that we can work on today to make the state better. Politics can wait a couple of months.
Collaboration is key. It's that underpinning word, and I talk about it in other chamber events, that collaboration is absolutely the key for government, industry, chambers to all work together. There is a win-win scenario here. There is hard work to do. There's always hard work to do in business and government. That's just the nature of the beast. It's hard to parent. All those things are hard. But the people that you surround yourself with, that's critical. So the people who are going to lift you up, are going to question you, support you. And I think today with Chris's comments that certainly how I feel is that collaboration is absolutely something that underpins the person you are, but also taking some of those longer term views and working collectively with the coalition to achieve outcomes for the state. I mean, that to me is quite refreshing, to be honest with you. We're going to move on to some Q&A so we can get some questions from the audience, and we'll grab some food. So Mike Yeo. So Mike is with the Castle RSL Group. He's a lifetime member here. Been in the community a very, very long time.
Thank you, Premier. We are getting a hospital fairly soon, I understand. And in all the hospitals that we have all sorts of problems with being able to do it efficiently with ramping. Have you considered the opportunity to co-locate in every single hospital a primary healthcare facility in the hospital? My reasoning for this is that in many of the people we have from other countries, they don't have a primary healthcare system in their country. So when they come here, the first place they go to is where the doctors are. And naturally that is the hospital. I believe we could do well. It's a federal problem to fund most of those external ones, and we have some good ones. There's a great one at Blacktown, but it's not co-located with a hospital. Have you considered this as a possibility? And if so, would you consider a trial?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. We have considered it, and you're absolutely right. You've set the scene exactly right. I was speaking to UNSW the other day, and their medical school, it used to be that 55, sometimes 60% of their graduates would go into general practice upon graduation, and now that number's down to about 15. Specialisation in medicine is where most of the graduates are going, and the general practice, the primary healthcare, the people that deal with everyday ailments, is just becoming not a big part of the profession anymore, which eventually puts enormous pressure on emergency departments. So we really appreciate the investment from the federal government for the urgent care clinics. We have experimented with it at, I think it's in the Nepean Hospital, where it's co-located with an urgent care clinic. I don't think it's worked brilliantly because many people that went into the urgent care clinic were immediately referred into the emergency department. It sort of acted like a bit of a magnet. But there's got to be a better coordination between what we're providing. State government's responsible for public hospitals and emergency departments. The feds are responsible for primary healthcare and GPs. we can do better in that collaboration. Whether it's on site, I wouldn't commit to that, but we're up for any kind of innovation that makes it better.
Happy to take some more questions. Kerry Sheaves. So Kerry is actually the previous chair of this chamber. Now runs her own business as well.
Oh, we did then too. Chris, just a quick question for you. In this region, there's a bit of a myth that we don't like building, that we don't want to have high rise and all of those kind of things. And it's not true, but what we are most concerned about is the other infrastructure we need: schools, parks, the roads, the things that actually support families and couples moving into the area and taking up things like apartments. What is the government looking to do now to address that support infrastructure in regions like ours as we increase apartments?
Yeah, I mean, I could go through the roads, Rouse Hill Hospital, the new schools that we're building alongside public hospitals. It is record budgets for those three key areas of New South Wales government spending. So public health, New South Wales roads, and public education. The truth is, we're playing catch up because for a long time there was an underinvestment in that part. So it's a little bit like filling up the top of a bottle when the bottom also has a hole in it. And that's been a big focus for Warren and myself, to try and lift up just that spending per capita, if you like, associated with fast-growing communities. We've tried to match that with two things. Firstly, ensuring that, and you would have seen this yourself in the Hills, or Blacktown Council, or Camden Council, the majority of new development was going to those three councils. What Warren and myself and the Planning Minister have said is, you shouldn't take all of that inbound new housing. We have to spread it across metropolitan Sydney. And that's caused a bit of heartache when it comes to our friends in the eastern suburbs, or in the lower North Shore, or in my community in St George and the Shire. But if everybody takes a little bit, no one takes too much. And what it means is that we can catch up on infrastructure by taking the pressure off population. Now, that doesn't, the Hills is a big area. It's going to take its share of inbound new housing. But if Wallara and Burwood and Canada Bay and Georges River and Bayside can as well, it means you get a better level. And by the way, this isn't revolutionary. Up until 15 years ago, we used to have about 50-50 greenfields and brownfields new developments. And then it skewed almost 75% into your community. And I think most people, when I speak to people in the Winston Hills or the Hills or any part of the Northwest, they often say to me, hey, we're prepared to take our share, but we're not prepared to take our share plus your share plus your share plus your share. And one of the best things I think we've been able to do is to, as much as we possibly can, equalise that new development in Sydney. By the way, that's how big cities around the world grow. You don't see Paris or London or Barcelona or New York just add another street to their western fringe every other week. They try and have a mix. That's what we're trying to do for Sydney.
We've got time for a couple more questions. Breakfast is coming out now, by the way. Two more questions. Anyone would have... The gentleman at the back there, or Karim, sorry. Karim.
Couldn't see you there.
Karim is one of our committee members, helps run the chamber.
Good morning, Premier. I just want to ask, when we spoke about small business and the challenges they face, and it appears that Business Connect has stopped being funded at a time when small businesses really needed as much advice as they could get, not just due to the economic environment, but also with the transition we're going through. One could call it an industrial revolution with the introduction of artificial intelligence. So why is the funding stopped for Business Connect when it's really required at this point in time?
Karim, thank you for your question. And you're right to ask it. And the truth of the matter is, sometimes governments need to make difficult decisions. And we have cut outlays, not just in relation to Business Connect, but into other programs that were supported by the community that many people wished we were going to continue. The truth of the matter is, over the forward estimates, Business Connect cost $40 million. $40 million in a big budget like New South Wales might not seem like a lot, but it does add up. I want to give you the the absolute reason why we had to make difficult decisions, not just in relation to Business Connect, but many other programs. When we came into government, the budget before the election, the government brought down a $14 billion deficit. Now, I'm not complaining or whinging about that. There's reasons for it. COVID was a national emergency. There needed to be business programs and employee programs that were put in place to sustain the economy. But $14 billion is way more in a deficit, way more than a government the size of New South Wales can sustain year on year. And as a result of the changes that we've made over the last 3 years, difficult decisions, we've got that from $14 billion to $2.5 billion deficit. And we hope to show a surplus in the years ahead, although we can't promise it because I don't know what the global economy is going to do. Now, they're tough calls, but I think New South Wales was effectively living beyond its means for a long period of time, and not many people were worried about where the money would come from day to day to day. And one of the outlays and one of the reasons why we pursued workers' comp reform is, in addition to the billions of dollars that businesses in this state have had to put into the scheme, you and your tax dollars had to put another $5 billion just to keep the program solvent. So what I'm trying to say is we've had to confront difficult challenges with the budget and our outgoing spending. It's happened across the economy. We've tried to be fair about it, but I can't gild the lily here. In some cases, there have been unpopular decisions. But Labor governments are often criticised because they don't worry about the budget, they don't worry about the bottom line, they think they can just send a credit card to the next generation. And frankly, I've just decided we're not going to do that.
Chris, you mentioned there about the fact that you've got to make some tough decisions about the budget. There's no doubt about that. And what I would say off the back of that is that if there's not the money, there's not the money. But that tells me that there's actually a lot more value in chambers of commerce to provide that service to business, to support them as they go through their journey of starting from day one into small, medium enterprise. That if right now we can't afford it, well, that's what it is, then that reinforces the value of the chamber movement across the state. We've got one more question, so I'm going to ask the Mayor, Michelle Byrne, to chat to you. And as you can see, yeah, breakfast is coming out.
Here you are, Michelle. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here today, and I do appreciate you coming to Hills, and I acknowledge the challenges that your government faces. I'm probably not your most favourite mayor in the state, I'm sure of that. But today, my question is, we have 26,000 small businesses in the Hills. They're providing the jobs for today and for the jobs for the future, and particularly as our population grow, we rely more and more on our small businesses. But it's the cost of doing business and the red tape around doing businesses and the energy costs, compliance costs, payroll tax and all those sorts of things that are making it more and more difficult for business to start, exist and to hire and retain staff, which is what we want them to do here in the Hills, because in the Michelle Byrne utopian world, you get to do everything here without ever leaving. So what is your government going to do to try and make it easier in terms of reducing costs, maybe reforming payroll tax and those sorts of things to try and make it easier for businesses to hire and retain staff? And I guess the other question too is, what can government do in terms of the pipeline for apprentices and improving that vocational pathway to ensure that we get the staff that we need out here in the workers, and particularly in that construction industry when we're trying to unlock a housing supply and we don't have enough construction workers to be able to get the shovels in the ground to deliver the housing that the state needs.
No, great question, Michelle. And you are one of my favourite mayors. So
I'm glad to hear that.
No, I'm not never going to be one of those premiers that lays into mayors of any political persuasion. It's such a tough job. You're close to the people, and I can imagine your Woolworths shop is about 4 times longer than everyone else's as people come up to you. And so, no, hats off to your public service, quite genuinely. I mean, they're really good questions. The 3 things I'd say, and I think they're practical things, but they make a difference in terms of business and the economy, is our housing agenda. We need houses for the next generation. Workers' comp, I hate to come back to it, but it's one of, if not the single biggest expense that New South Wales businesses are confronting. I didn't say this earlier, but that workers' comp component of wages is about 2.2% in New South Wales. In Queensland, it's 1.6%. So we're, particularly on the Tweed, you're paying twice as much in New South Wales as you are in Queensland. That's unsustainable for the future. And then the last thing is I think that fixed infrastructure that we're trying to put in as soon as possible to help firms in New South Wales. The Sydney's Northwest, the best thing we can do, particularly for tradies, is the toll cap, $60 a week. By the way, the theory behind the toll cap is, you might not know this, but the Opal fares are capped. Weekly Opal fares are capped, and usually by the time you get to Friday, it's free because you've racked up enough fares to give you a free go on the public transport network. And we believed, well, if you don't have access to the kind of public transport that they have in Mossman or Cogra or Leichhardt, then you should be able to have almost a similar program because you're a motorist, and that's the reason for the toll cap. So they're the practical measures that we are pursuing. We want to make sure that they're funded, we're progressing them, but they're hugely important for this part of the world. And I think you bang on when it comes to apprentices. Vocational education and training is an area of government spending that we've increased, but if I'm going to be frank with you, I haven't seen the results that I would have loved to see in the economy. We're not producing enough chippies, plumbers, sparkies that we need for the residential housing construction sector quickly enough. We've got a good minister there in Steve Wong, but he's on it, and I think the money's there, although he'd argue not quite enough, but the results aren't there yet, if I'm going to be honest.
Thanks very much, Premier. We're going to stop and have something to eat now. I know he's got a very busy schedule today. I'll be back in a few minutes to wrap up. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Thanks, Jason.